Rebel Moon is Zack Snyder's new film, and it's out on Netflix. This movie's been long awaited for a while. It's being described as a sci fi epic. I wouldn't really call it that. But, Snyder started with DC. He became very big from that, and he made all those DC movies like Man of Steel and Justice League, the Zack Snyder Justice League, of course. And then he did Army of the Dead, which I really enjoyed. Honestly, I thought it was a good merging of the genres for him, the heist and zombie genres. I thought his style fit that very well. But here is his new movie, and to be clear, this is not that great a movie. It feels more like a combination of popular nerd tropes. A lot of Snyder's films look more like music videos than something Hollywood would spend money on, and not really good music videos. When you watch a film by the works of Denis Villeneuve or Christopher Nolan, you get that very distinct, very authentic feeling that you do not get here. And it's that feeling of care, of a movie being handled with finesse and ease. This film is horribly cheap looking. It's either too bright or too dark. It's filled with very obvious green screen, and it's ugly. It does not help with the immersion. When you're watching Rebel Moon, I did not feel like I was watching some beautiful world or planet from another universe. I felt like I was watching a bunch of sound stages with either some dirt or some grass or smoke scattered around it. And all the backgrounds are CG and really bad CGI backgrounds. And, with Dune, the CGI is incredible. I'm talking about the new Dune from Denis Villeneuve. This movie felt like David Lynch's Dune. I love David Lynch, but it's just so poorly paced. It's complicated with how it explains its plot, and it's just ugly. With Dune, it's really immaculate. The Denis Villeneuve one, you can't tell what's real versus what's superimposed there. Obviously, Dune uses a lot of CGI, but it's helped by the fact that a lot of what they are shooting is actually there in cameras. The ornithopters, those insect-like flight vehicles, were actually helicopters that were filmed and then covered with CGI in the film. And all the backgrounds in Dune were also lit properly and matched. And this is just all over the place. The biggest problem for me is this lack of immersion. You go to the movies to escape, to feel like you're in a different time, to get engaged with these characters. It's just so hard to feel that with this movie. I feel like, in his other movies, the Justice League ones, they have the same problems, but at least there's this very known IP, so that kind of helped. I mean, I still had a lot of issues with his theatrical cut of Batman vs. Superman. The director's cut I did like a little more. It was darker, it leaned into more of the, mannerisms of Lex Luthor and stuff. But really here, this just feels like a typical Zack Snyder movie. It looks like a bunch of video game cutscenes, actors standing around large, expensive sets with almost nothing around them. It really emphasizes the idea that what you're seeing isn't real. I mean, almost every scene is shot against some kind of blue or green screen, and the result is less than impressive. It's basically Ant-Man Quantumania with the aesthetics of space Nazis or porn Star Wars, but like a typical Snyder film, it's not just the mucky and grimy visuals that bog it down, it's the whole story, or a lack of story thereof. This could have worked. It has the appropriate beats and tropes, washed, rinsed, and repeated, everything from Seven Samurai to Star Wars to, of course, Dune. And honestly, all it needs are good characters. The problem is the movie doesn't have any of that. And there's also another big obvious problem with the movie. The movie's DP is Zack Snyder. He directed and he shot this. And when you think big space epic that Netflix is making this film out to be, you wouldn't think of this. This feels honestly like a rushed, super long episode of some Disney Plus Star Wars show if you gave it the TVMA rating. Yeah, even though Netflix forced Zack Snyder to make this PG-13, you could still see his vision popping through, and as a result, the action scenes are obviously sliced to ribbons. Snyder said he had a director's cut that's an hour longer, and I'm sure there are some scenes that will expand the plot, especially beyond the villains being these one-note space Nazis who you hardly see and just come down at the beginning to kill Corey Stahl's planetary father, and then they threaten these poor, humble farmers unless they produce them 10,000 bushes of sustenance, they're going to kill them. And aside from that, there's like no real motive, no plot. It's just this quick thing at the introduction, and I really just didn't like how the movie just felt like so nothing. Snyder loves his violence. And that brings me to a core issue with the film, and the issue with all of Snyder's films. They're just so damn ugly and bloated. And they just are there to serve the idea that this is some visual treat, which it's not. I mean, keep in mind, the film's opening is kind of interesting. I like to see this farming planet, Velt. I was interested in Cora, our protagonist, who's played by Sofia Boutella. She is the typical Luke Skywalker, Paul Atreides, or Neytiri even, journey where she has to gather or lead a group of defenders against a hostile force in this sci-fi charged background. Snyder's just so bad at doing this. And, like I said, nothing feels real. It just, all the bits and pieces just cobble together so poorly, all the planets they visit. It isn't like there's a great story tying it down. It just feels like you want to go to all these different nerd fetish things that Snyder thought of, but the way it comes together is awful. Like, most movies do this so better. There's this giant spider alien lady played by Jenna Malone who they encounter at one point, and they go to pick up this girl named Nemesis. That's seriously her name, Nemesis. And she has some unique hat design I like, kind of like a one-piece hat, and these obvious fake lightsabers. But if anything, all the movie does is it has this weird stylization. It does nothing beyond that. Like I said, I like the weird Jenna Malone alien, but if that's all you can bring and you can't bring a good way to tie it in, like, Jabba the Hutt, or like in Dune, how they tie in the giant sandworms, it just doesn't work. It just feels like this random moment that you're going to forget about. And like I said, like Justice League, or even Zack Snyder's Justice League for that matter, he doesn't care about growing his characters. He just wants to see this world he created. And usually that means there's little room for character development. We meet all the usual guys. Cora makes it her mission to round up and recruit the 7 warriors to stop Ed Scarin's octopus fucking space Nazi. Yeah, there's like this octopus bit in that. And there's really no story beyond that. It's just stopping, rounding up a character, watching them get into some video game-esque fight. My favorite is like the Avatar one where they're trying to ride this giant Ikron sparrow dragon. And there's this buff shirtless dude whose name I don't even remember. And they just recruit him. And that's the part of the movie. Then let's go on. Let's recruit more people. You just don't care about them. And then when they're finally together and they got everyone, the movie ends. Of course, not after one giant ugly fight. It's just so ugly and boring. I keep saying that. Another really bad aspect, though, of this is the flashbacks and the backstory. There's just so much. And I appreciate, in Dune, how they give a bit of narration at the beginning, like Chani's voiceover. And you have bits of information given, like when Paul's reading. It's all gradually paced. It all feels like part of the world. But this movie just opens with the Netflix logo and drops you in. And Anthony Hopkins is already doing this voiceover. He also plays this robot. There's no reason to have him in this as this C-3PO parody. And it just opens with Anthony Hopkins explaining so much information. I wouldn't be shocked if you fell asleep or if you just didn't understand anything they were saying. It's like doing homework. It shouldn't be like that. You should watch a movie and be entertained. Just because Snyder wants to introduce this whole lore of this ancient kingdom, it doesn't matter. And then also the flashbacks don't matter. They are so distracting. They just feel like they're there so you can watch these cool shots. And even those cool shots feel like, there's not hundreds of extras. Like Star Wars feels like there's hundreds of extras. Most movies, they feel like there's a weight. This movie doesn't feel like it has that weight to it. And it's just missing that. I don't really care about these heroes like Devra Bloodaxe and Charlie Hunnam's Kai. He feels like a cheap Han Solo. As much as I wanted to like Sofia Boutella's Cora, she brings this intensity to it. I do like her. I just thought the character is so dull. And there's only a couple moments where she actually has like human interaction with other characters like Charlie Hunnam. But aside from that, there's just nothing. It just feels like this movie is here to set up the next movie. It's almost like Zack Snyder's Marvel film. And he just has trouble making characters who are interesting. And plots who are interesting. And everything who are interesting. It's just really not a great film. I really just feel like they did the bare minimum here. You don't feel like there's a weight to it. You don't feel like there's anything really worth watching. Like I said, most blockbusters feel like there's hundreds of extras. Even this is like Zack Snyder's Napoleon. It's just so boring the way he tries to thread a story through all these events, and you can just tell he has no passion for the whole thing. It's just a couple beats, let's move on. And I just really did not like this film. So guys, let me know what you think of Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon. If you agree, it just feels like a cheap movie, and it shouldn't. Let me know what you guys think. And The Scargiver comes out next year, so let's see that, and hopefully it will be better. But I honestly don't know. A director's cut will be coming, and then we can judge.